7:02, time to start. My name is Susan Stevenson, and I'm the chair of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation. I'm calling this meeting of January 14th, 2019 to order. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
I make a motion that we open this meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation
Second?
on January 14th.
Second? Aye.
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 Oh. First, I'd like to introduce the board. To my right, Jeff Broadleaf. To my left, Christina Redding and Rob Coburn. Curtis Highsmith will not be here tonight. Secondly, I'd like to make it clear that in this room, I expect everyone will speak and act with civility. I will give a warning, and then I will ask for an adjournment if things start to get out of control. I'd also like to acknowledge our counsel, Bo Robinson, historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, and our videographer, Charlie Styler, and Antoinette Edwards, the recording secretary. Anyone who is intending to speak or has an application, do we have a piece of paper up here?
I just took.
Oh, okay. Okay, should have signed so that we have the proper spelling of your name. When you come up, please introduce yourself.
That's cool.
That being said, if you have materials, please put them on this table facing us, which would be not facing you, so that Charlie can pick it up. With that, I think we should start with our the minutes approval for December 10th.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes for December 10th, 2018.
Were there additions? Rob did.
There was some edits that were
Yeah.
put in
So then
Everybody
you're approving the minutes as amended?
as amended.
as amended.
As amended.
Second? Aye.
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 I said aye.
Aye. Four aye. It passed. The minutes have been approved as amended for December 10th, 2018. Next, we're moving on to signs. The first sign is Shelter Rock Estates, Helena Clooney's Ross Contractor Combo sign. Hello. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Any comments by the board? Or would you, it's pretty self-explanatory what you say or not. Do you have anything to say? Okay. We think it's a little busy, I think it's a little busy that design, build, and develop might be removed.
And I agree. So, in other words, if you could remove essentially what's
Just
advertising.
remove those three.
I mean, it's pretty clear what you're doing.
Right, so these are two separate, this is a contractor sign where the builder and the designer are on one sign. So they were hoping that the builder and the design, and the architect, it's really an architect, could both have their information on there.
But they have one telephone number, so I'm confused. You're saying it's two companies, but they have one telephone number.
It's the contractors.
Two say design, both say design, one says design, build, and so I would say that it's confusing at its core, and it's advertising at its worst. So, if you want to remove that line, that's great.
Can they keep any of the line there?
No.
So then
What would happen if they just had Shelter Rock Estates and had build, and then just design, or do you want all this taken out?
Well, is Shelter Rock State the developer? Who's who?
Helena Ross is the designer, the architect/designer, and Shelter Rock Estates is the one who is doing the building and developing.
If you say Shelter Rock Estates developer and Helene whatever design, then I guess that's a decent compromise.
But he's also the builder, so can we keep builder and developer
now
there?
you're pushing it. I want to get through this meeting tonight, and that's pushing it.
So
Okay?
how about you?
I don't have a problem with the sign as it is, but I'm happy to.
I do
listen
think
to
it's-
concerns. It's a little
It's
busy,
advertising
but
in
it's a
a
very
sense.
clean design overall. which
I like the way
appreciate.
it's presented. I mean, if you're insisting that could come out because that design is down there.
All right, so are we asking
It's,
to take out the line that says
I'm asking to take it out.
design, build,
Jeff, would it make
develop?
a difference?
It is a majority, so whatever you
Jeff, would
got.
it make a difference to you if the last two lines were combined and it just said Helena Clooney's Ross, comma, designer? Does that help for any reason to remove a
But that's
line?
contrary to
No.
what
I
they
just think,
want.
I honestly think if you took this line out, I'd be happy, and so would Jeff. Because it is, I mean, the whole point of our going over these signs is not to have an advertising element to it.
I understand that.
Okay,
But I would be okay if if one guy said either builder or developer, just one word, and the other one said designer.
Okay, so can we have build and design rather than builder and designer?
so you're saying, you're asking us to remove develop and design on the third line, is that correct?
I am.
Am I allowed, can you mark it then and sign?
We can
and-
just make the motion subject to that change, can't we?
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the sign of Shelter Rock as amended, removing the words noted on the page.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,
Next is a contractor sign for Windward Construction Management.
something's, what is that? That was the,
If you wish to.
Yeah, good evening. I'm just Justin Fullwiler. I represent Windward Construction, and this was our signage proposal.
I like your sign. Does anyone have any objections to the sign?
No, it's great.
Nope.
Very clean.
Not at all.
Does anyone from the audience have any commentary?
I'll make a motion that we approve the sign for Windward Construction Management.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you, Board.
Aye.
Aye.
Next is a sign for Line Home Enterprises, again, a contractor sign.
What was that? Jeff? Oh, she has one. Okay.
Hi.
Now what?
Oh, yeah, my name is Alicia De Los Santos.
Rob?
Is that their logo?
Is that your logo? Is that the logo? Guess so.
Yes.
Is it?
I would be happier with the sign if the logo were a little smaller or the telephone number were a little smaller. It feels billboardy a little bit. I appreciate that it's your logo and that there's not much other information on it. It feels a little like an advertisement. Does anyone share that concern?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I would suggest is, along with Rob's suggestion, is to, rather than put the telephone, I'd reduce the font on the telephone, and rather than it being white on black, I'd remove the black and just put a simple,
Black letters of the...
Black letters,
Of the
yeah.
reduced size of the numbers on the
Yep.
phone? How about licensed and insured? Do we need all this?
We don't really need that, you assume they are, but
yeah.
That doesn't bother me.
It doesn't
I
particularly...
think smaller numbers, that's
Smaller numbers and reversed out, is that correct?
Yep.
So if we could reduce the font by about a third, roughly, and turn that black?
Do you mean like the whole thing black and then the font?
No, we mean that
Remove the
you've put
background.
Oh,
a
okay.
black...
Yeah.
So you've dropped out, it's called, and put white letters
Yeah.
for this. So what we're asking is that you simply make make these numbers smaller and make them in black font
Take away
and
the
take
black
this
background.
black background out.
Okay. Yeah, I
Actually,
see.
I think it would be better for your sign. So how, can we mark
Is that
this up?
acceptable to you? Do you understand?
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
we're asking you to reduce the size of the numbers and make them black and have them on simply on the white background of the sign. Is the back, or is it blue?
It's not blue,
It's just, okay.
Yeah.
Comes off a little gray in the reproduction.
Okay,
So I'll make a
so,
motion that we approve the sign for Line Home Enterprises, subject to a reduction in the size of the font for the telephone number, removal of the black background banner, and turning the telephone number font to black print.
What size font do you want it reduced to?
we don't have the specifics. We're
No.
saying reduce it by a third.
I would say somewhere between the font that's used for roofing and siding and the
So the same
existing
as that.
Can you
font.
designate on the document then the length of the font, the height of the font?
Yeah.
If I had a ruler, I could do a lot of things, but I don't.
But I think Robert's right.
Just make it the same as the roofing and siding height.
Yeah, okay.
So we're saying make phone numbers smaller, same size,
As roofing and
That's more
siding.
specific.
that's better.
So I amend my motion to say that it would be reducing the font of the telephone number to the same size as roofing and siding, putting that number in black, and removing the black background banner. That's my motion.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
And another contractor signed for Moises Cerdas Builders.
That's nice. What's that one?
My name is Steve Ospitali with Moises A. Cerdas Builder.
Does anyone have an objection to this?
I don't.
No,
Do you?
no,
Anyone from the
it's a no
audience?
sign.
We'll save you the time tonight.
Sorry. Charlie, is that good?
Aim it over here, maybe? For this camera.
There we go. Okay. Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the sign for Moises A. Cerdas Builder.
All right, thank you.
Second?
Second?
Okay.
Do
Are you seconding it?
I'll second.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Approved. Good evening. Next. Oh, here, we have to get this paperwork put away. Are you good?
I'm good, so far.
All right, because
Anytime. I'll get
I mean, I
confused.
think sometimes I rush people, and we should be more careful with the paperwork. Next is written decisions.
You have before you this evening 5 cases that have written decisions. Each of the decision approves the application either as submitted or amended. Therefore, an affirmative vote on the motion would be to approve the decision.
Any board members have any comments on the written decision? No. Right, is this the original copy? All right, are we ready to vote on this one
I
then?
make a motion that we approve the written decision for LF 57 Main Street.
I'll second. Aye.
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 Aye. Approved. Next,
I don't think you,
Yeah,
we did,
Christina, you voted?
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't vote, so.
Want us to do it again?
No.
Okay. PMA Southampton.
Over Building Square, I'll make a motion that we approve the application, the written decision, excuse me, by council for PMA Southampton LLC.
Were there,
Second.
anyone
sorry.
have any comments?
Nope.
Okay.
Aye.
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 Jeff?
Aye, thank you.
Do you actually have those files there for these?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'm going to return these to you that we've done so that we don't have any paperwork problems that we may or may not have had in the past. So we're careful. Next, 205 Windmill Lane LLC. Has everyone had a chance to examine this written decision? Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the application, the written application by our council of 205 Windmill Lane LLC.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Just thinking, did we,
Aye.
right, this one, the rises to be stone, is that in here?
It may not be in the decision, but it's in the plans.
Was it? Is it in the plans?
Well, because we had to write in the plans, right?
Let me check.
It's in the,
Jeff, the specific concern is,
That the risers on the front were going to be in stone as opposed to, I think, they were either in stucco or wood or something, but
I think it was going to be brick, actually. Wasn't it?
risers to be stone.
Brick underneath bluestone?
yeah, with the riser would be brick and the tread would be
Okay, is that what it shows in the plan? If it does, then I'm good with it.
Plans in the file do not indicate the material for the risers. Indicates that the foundation is to be parged, stucco, but does not indicate the material. It implies that the steps would be treated the same, but it doesn't state that, doesn't provide other materials for the steps on the plans.
But what did we say it was going to be?
risers and bluestone tread. If you want to make a note.
Write it in there?
I'll write it in.
Well, I see
believe
brick
that was- I
risers,
believe
the
that was
front
there.
entry converted to brick risers and bluestone tread.
that?
The very last line of page 1. All good.
Okay, good. Never
Great.
mind. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, so I'm giving this back to you, but now I'm missing,
Jan split.
this also is a copy. I have, okay, where's the original?
This is Windmill Lane.
Catch up with it tomorrow.
I think I have, here's Jan Split.
Is there an original?
Good question.
It would be,
I don't see anything listed as an original instrument.
Right on it, original.
I don't even have one, so maybe we'll pass that down. I will write original in this one. This is a Jan split. Do you have one of these Jan splits? No.
No.
Okay, so this is original.
Well, these are all copies, right?
No, but sure is going to be an original, one of the two.
I have to sign the original one, is how it works. Has everyone had a chance to review this? I did. Okay, we have a motion to vote? I don't have, you know what I don't have, though, is a place to write the vote. Should I write it on the back? Let me just see, no. Can you look in the back? Does anyone have this?
See if any of the other copies
Yeah.
of it. Oh, here's one. Here's one that has the vote.
Oh, I have it. I'm sorry, it's out of order.
They attached a list of changes.
Okay, sorry. I apologize, Bill. It was put in a funny place. All right, so we can vote on this? Motion to approve the written decision.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our council for Jan Split Purchase Trust on
Gin Lane.
Gin Lane.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Vote?
Aye.
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 And I'm a nay.
Okay. So this is going in, do you have that file? It's enormous. I see it. It's at the far end of that file.
Jan Split, it's right here.
Okay, now I don't,
Innovative, you have that?
I have Innovator Properties, but a copy.
The original is in there someplace.
Okay. Does anyone have one that says original?
Yeah, the copy.
Here's the original instrument.
Okay, I'm giving you this one back now. Great. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the written application for Innovative
I make a
Properties.
motion that we approve the written application for Innovative Properties.
Decision.
Innoventor.
Oh, the written decisions. The written decision by council for Innovative Properties LLC.
It's Innoventor for the record, and I will second the motion.
Oh, Innovative. Aye.
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 All right, I didn't sign these pieces of paper, Stephen, if you sign them tomorrow. Okay, okay, thank you. Great. Yes, we just did it. It was just before this. Thank you. There was a nay for Mr. Coburn, everyone else was an aye. Moving on, driveway gates, non-historic. Ocean Play LLC, 155 Wyandanch Lane. Is there anyone here?
Second call?
This is, I believe, our third call,
Where
I
is
think.
Second call tonight.
Second call tonight, leave it out.
I'm saying it's come up 3 times before without
There's nobody here
representation.
for second call, then you can address the issue.
Okay, next, Petroselli and Dioro, 70 Pulaski Street. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Zachary Clanahan. I represent Neil and Liza Petroselli on 70 Pulaski Street. And we're proposing security entry gates for pedestrians and also for the driveway. And we know of your sensitivity to having them prominent on the street, so we set them back about 50 feet from the road edge. And the clients have concern about 2 things. First, they have a dog that they're worried is going to run out onto the street. And then also they have small children that come in the summer and they're afraid they're going to run out from the back side of the house to the front. So that's why they have this concern. We want to do these gates. We're also maintaining the 50% transparency, and we try to make it as low-key as possible.
Materials?
It's going to be a wood gate, wrapped steel columns with AZEC primed and painted.
Can you indicate which one of those floors is the one you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Can you indicate which one of the floors?
Oh, you should put your plan.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, let me put this here.
Here, take it. Oh, okay, good.
So this will be actually out of wood, and these are steel columns wrapped with AZEC.
Okay.
We're matching the color of the trim of the house, and the columns match the columns of the front entry, and the caps match the metal standing seam of the covered porch itself.
So, board, I think it's a little too matchy. I sort of feel like, is it going to be black? Maybe if the caps on those AZEC posts were white,
Okay.
I would be happier. I'm still not thrilled with it. I thought you did such a good job on this house. I was really impressed. But I feel like this kind of takes away from the simplicity of the house in a way for some appendage that really isn't that important, but is quite showy. Anyone else?
And some of the same concerns. Just for clarification, this section that's to the left of the driveway, as you're viewing it there, is that an operable gate? Is that why it's divided in 2?
Section to the left of, yeah, this is the pedestrian part,
Yep.
and this is the operable for the
One-
driveway.
Right. The one half of the pedestrian part operates as a gate.
Both of these actually operate. Yep.
Yeah, this presents
I think it's sort of contemporary looking.
But do you want to look, I feel like it draws attention to the thing that you shouldn't be looking at, which isn't a gate. If it were all white, I'd like it even better, maybe.
I think they would be open to changing the colors.
What do you think?
well, actually...
You like it black?
Is it black or is it gray?
It's a black finish, but the way it was rendered, it's, if you go by the street, it's like a kind of like a semi-gloss black on the trim.
Is it already existing?
The house is already existing,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, no, I know.
But the gates are not.
The gates will match the trim, though, of the
They will,
house?
yeah.
Oh, I thought it was gray.
Let me see it.
So,
It would be open
It
to going
has
white.
black around the windows. It's a very
Yeah.
black, it's a black and white little house, but he did such a nice job of making
You know,
a little house not too big.
Thank you.
This presents a conundrum for me in as much as I'm philosophically against gates within that part of the village that is not in a state area. I don't see the purpose, the reason architecturally for gates on third of an acre, half an acre lots. So that would have me voting against this a priori. That being said, Zach, I think you are sensitive, and I like your design. I'm not sure that white or black, as opposed to the gray that I see here, would make it more prominent. I agree with Susan that I think you have a good design. I think your concerns about a dog and a child, that is not exclusive to the applicant, and quite honestly, does not have necessarily sway with this board.
Okay.
One way or the other. So I'm puzzled. I like your design.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary on that house. I think it actually, like Susan says, takes away from what is a very good, simple design. I wish the owners would choose not to have a gate, but among the gates they could have chosen, this one's pretty damn good. So I don't know what the hell we did.
Okay. If we propose to move it back a little bit further,
That's what I was going to ask. Could it be moved back to
to
the main
that.
form of the house as opposed to the porch there?
yes, we
You
could.
know what?
That would help.
That would be a
could.
lot. I actually,
And I warned them that you may ask that.
I know that they've
because you
already
like
put it
that
back.
too. Okay.
They've already put it
There's
back.
some functionality to having it there because they also want to be able to store maybe some of their
Kitty stuff.
Yeah, just things drop off there and have it right there ready to be put into the car where someone
Well, how
pulls
many
up.
feet back is it from there? Not very many, is it?
It's about 3 or 4 feet from the corner, so it's not a big change to
I
put it
think
to
it would
the
look
corner.
better.
It would look better.
Because
Because right now it obscures the form of the house a little bit. I
It would
think we're
also be
reacting
a
to that.
smaller gate. Is
It would
that
go to a
correct?
single pedestrian gate as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that,
That would be great. we
yeah.
can make
Then
that
if it were white, it would be even nicer because it's right up against your white house. But, so are you going to have, but you're going to have a white post?
Do you
I hear
think-
what
do you
you're
think
saying
white-
on the white. I think that the dark actually will go away visually more.
How about the cap? So maybe if they just change the caps, I feel like
Yeah,
it
the caps-
accentuates the black and white to have the caps on those white posts. Just too matchy. It's already, to me,
Just go all white on the columns?
Post.
I think that would be better. Do you?
On the post or on?
On the posts, and just let they have the slats be black.
Okay.
We actually did an option for that when we were doing different colors, so I know it works.
You're comfortable with all those changes?
Yeah.
You're a licensed architect, right?
Yep.
So can we
you
get
mark
him to
this
note
up?
those
Can you
here?
mark it up?
Yes.
Okay, can you mark up
Sure.
a set of plans, 2 sets? Sure. Here's another one, and cut and bring it back to us?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, this is
Can I
always,
make the motion now, subject to receiving these back?
Are they the biggest plans in the file, the ones you got?
these are,
These
yeah.
are the biggest.
All right, two stamps.
Are there, no, that's not true.
For the
They're the
gates?
plans.
Those are the
That's one
plans.
that
He
should
needs
be
to mark
marked up.
those up. These are just the,
So you want me to just mark those up now and then resubmit them?
yes,
tonight?
you can, there's a
Okay.
table in the hallway by the front door if you want
Just
to
mark
see.
them up and bring them
Bring
back
them
to us,
back.
and in the meantime, we'll make a
Because we don't want
motion.
to hold up, it's silly to
Can I make
have
the
to do
motion
this
now,
twice.
subject to?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the plans for driveway gates at 70 Pulaski, subject to moving the gates further back to align with the main form of the house as opposed to the porch, and
White caps.
white caps on the columns,
Okay, thank you very much.
Second.
Shown on the,
as shown on the plans to be, as shown on the drawings that will be amended.
annotated by the architect.
That's my motion.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, so amended plans, okay? There are no historic driveway gates, so we're moving on. But let you get your paperwork in order.
Is there another copy, stamped copy of these plans?
We don't need that. do we?
No, because he's bringing.
No, but the small ones, the stamped
Those are
copy.
just
Okay.
decorative, I believe. What they really need is the building plans. That creates the building permit. Are we good?
We're good?
Madison Avenue Capital Partners, 1323 Meadow Lane. Construct 2-story single-family dwelling with attached, sorry, garage, I'm making this up. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. With attached garage. State your name, please.
Good evening. Mayron, McDonough and Conway Architects, on behalf of Madison Avenue Partners.
So what's different here? Oh, a lot? I mean, these are pretty pictures, but it's not really... This landscaping you're showing is not representative of reality, is it?
It is existing.
Oh, it is? Are you
Yes.
leaving it?
Like a tropical destination.
Yeah, it's not ringing a bell, but
I'll
okay.
explain that to you in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem.
You told us he was used to return to different values that represented the
Okay.
totality.
Which is kind of obscure.
Good evening again. I just submitted 2 new renderings. One is the day view, if you will, and the other one is a sunset view or a night view. May not be a major concern, but we had it, so we figured we'll present it to the board. In our last meeting, I think Mr. Broadley mentioned the height and the massing of the proposed house. What we did is we took some actual street shots. If you look at these things, numbered 129, driving west on Meadow Lane.
Okay.
This is, the actual rendering is photoshopped in here with the actual landscaping.
Okay.
Well, the actual existing landscaping, I mean. As you travel west,
Okay.
these are the views that you are going to see. And this is the rendering that you see before you is as realistic depiction of what you would see when you get to the driveway, if you will. The landscaping within the property is proposed. Many of the landscaping that you see here are actually existing. Some items are slightly photoshopped to make it look pretty, but this is all existing.
Yeah.
And that's actually the road. So we tried to address your concern in terms of massing and the height.
So what's changed on the massing and the height?
Nothing. Nothing.
So you're just saying that it's not visible, it's not as visible as...
It's
he
not
was
as
concerned.
visible as the previous landscape, as the previous rendering that we submitted. I do have a copy of it here.
It was just
I think
standing
one of-
out in a field, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
The previous one was just this
Just
big
one
box.
big rendering, yes. I do have a copy of it. Let me refresh your memory for a second.
I'm sure we could refresh our own memory if we went and-
This was one of the earliest
Yeah.
version of the rendering, yes. So now, push this back to where actually it sits on the property, and that's the vision, that's the view that you're going to receive.
Jeff, does that address your concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I get a better perspective of it. I mean, it's still a
And Mr. Broad,
decent-sized house.
it's within the height.
Yeah.
It's within the allowable height. The only thing we had to do, Mr. Bennett was involved with, that was the volume on the east side that has been granted by the ZBA.
We have a copy of that? What was the wetlands situation?
No, it was a volume, it was the pyramid line was cutting into the proposed structure, and the ZBA has granted us a relief on that.
And is there, do you have a copy of that
I
decision?
don't have it with me, but it's already,
Yes, I understand it's already, but some of us might have been interested
Can you
in...
explain a little what exactly was the nature of the variance
the
again?
nature of variance was a... Sky plane variance. Sky plane, yes, correct. Thank you, John.
It's not pyramid. In the overlay district, if I may, John Bennett, in the district down there, there's a sky plane, which is effectively a pyramid setback from the front yard. which is not just it's not just the basic 45-degree angle. You move back, and then the whole idea is to keep the houses off the street, but it becomes problematic when you have a wetlands. You just can't achieve it. So we were able to demonstrate that all of the houses
Or nearby.
to the west, Golub and he's on the ZBA. Greenwald, thank you. And Hickey, and used to be Anson Beard's house, and one other, which is now Stuart Katzoff's house, all had that same massing in the front because the houses are pushed forward to achieve the maximum wetland setback.
And this house will be further back from the wetlands than the existing house, is that right?
Yes, that's the whole give and take.
That was why they gave this.
Significantly, yeah.
Yes. I didn't know that was going to be coming up, but if you look at the site, and this is out of scale, that's the footprint that we were allowed to work with. And the pyramid that Mr. Bennett just described is cutting in here as such.
Beautiful. Do you have any more comments?
No.
Are you good to go?
Yeah.
Are there any concerns about the maintenance of this border?
I don't think we can do that. Is there a landscaping plan in there?
Yes, there was a landscaping plan submitted. I do have a small copy of it.
Does it mention these existing plant, big, whatever they are, weedy things that are sticking up really high?
It's all within a regulated area, if I may, John Bennett.
Sure. You can't-
need approval to remove it.
Oh, okay, well, that's
It's all
great.
within a regulated wetland
That hasn't
area.
stopped a lot of people on other things lately, but okay, it's good to know.
Well, presumably if they all died as a result of the storm, the homeowner would be interested in
Well, everything would be
reestablishing there.
exposed, yeah. All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to address this application? No?
I make a motion that we approve the application of Madison Avenue Capital Partners at 1323 Meadow Lane.
Second.
Aye.
But that's two standard.
Are you voting, Chris?
I said,
You seconded it. Aye?
aye.
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 Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Next.
I took all the papers back.
Oh, okay. Henry and Bernadette Watkins, 44 Halsey Neck Lane. Construct 1- and 2-story additions with exterior alterations. Is there anyone here for this application?
Second call?
Second call. So that's next. Here. I don't think we need that. Thomas and Christian Ruger, 47 Lewis Street. Amend a prior ARB approval, exterior alterations. Mr. Brady is here.
Yes, I have affidavits of mailing and posting.
But you had to resubmit?
What's that?
New posting? Oh, this is
Yes.
new? So you had to do it again? Okay,
And here are small plans.
thank you. It's amended.
Can you rotate that and we can see it?
Brian, could you rotate this around?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, there's paperwork, as you well know, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this is a house that's not contributing on Lewis Street that is being renovated. It was a two-family house, and we're taking it back to a one-family house. It was approved by the ARB back in, I believe it was 2014, and at that point, we were trying to save as many of the windows that were there for budget reasons. And as we got into construction, we realized that the windows all needed to be replaced. So since we were replacing the windows, the owner brought in a designer, and the designer decided to make some changes to the house, and instead of it being a shingled house, it's now going to be a painted white house. And instead of having the 2/1 light windows, they felt that the 6/6, which is still a traditional window that's in the village quite a lot, gave it more of a feel of a cottage. So that's what they would like to change. So it's basically being painted white, and the windows are being changed.
But wait a minute.
Changed from what to what again? Did you
I
say,
don't see
Brian?
6/6.
On the top,
On the top, you'll see the 6/6, and below it, you'll see the 2/1 on each elevation.
and Brian, the shingles on the first floor front are being changed to siding?
At the porch, yes.
At the porch.
I have some examples of houses in the village that have the 6/6, if anyone would like to see them.
I like that.
It actually makes it feel a little bit more charming, you know.
More cottagey.
And are there also changes to the steps going from brick to stucco? Am I seeing that correctly in the plans?
No.
I don't think that's the case.
So what is it, and this is the, so Brian, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I have as-built,
Right, because they already put them in.
oh, now,
So
I'm
Not to
quite,
deceive
I have
anyone,
a
it's already
literal
there.
interpretation of most of these. So it's already happened?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the house was originally built, Brian, when?
In the 20s?
In the 20s. So in the 20s, it had the 2/1.
Maybe. None of the windows were original, and there was a combination of vinyl windows.
Could have been one of them.
Could have been 6/1.
They already swapped them out.
So here are the changes, all the windows and the color.
Yes.
Anything else?
And at the porch, front porch, on the first floor, they changed it to siding, just to give it some character.
I'm seeing some other changes, though, just to be clear. I want to be sure what we're approving here. Because on page 2 of what you've just given us, and I noted in the reviewing before, the brick patio face now says stucco patio face.
Okay.
Because it's white,
Is that correct?
it's way over.
No, it's brick, sorry. It's brick.
It is brick.
Yeah.
Okay. And it also looks as though an exterior stair was relocated, is that correct?
Well, there's a railing.
The exterior stair that was to the left of the chimney,
Right, they cut back the patio in the rear.
And they took a railing that went around something with the chimney here. This is removed?
Right, at that point, that was a stair to the basement, and that was removed.
Oh, I see. It's hard to tell on this.
but it looks like one was built on the as-built on the top on the left side of the house.
Where do you see
That's why I'm saying it looks like the exterior stair was relocated.
How can you see that? I don't see it. Oh, here?
On the very left of the elevation on the first page,
That's right.
this exterior stair.
Where you see the railing there, yeah, that's where the stair
So
moved
now they
to.
moved all that?
And then isn't there on the first page, on the as-built, is there not a difference in the slope on the, what would that be? That would be the south side? Well, this house is on the, what's the number? 47.
47.
So it's on the west side of the street. So on the south side of the house, isn't the slope of that roof now, instead of being flat across, is now angled?
Yeah, it's back to the way it was originally.
That's, originally before it was approved.
When it was approved to come all the way over, and now it went back.
And then on this one, there's the addition of a window up here versus what
That's
was
right.
approved.
That's right.
So the changes are not necessarily problematic.
They're substantial.
But the fact that, and we're seeing more and more of this, Brian, I'm not putting it on you, but it's becoming increasingly disconcerting that we spend time here, we approve plans, and then the plans come back and they're different. And
The thing is built different. Forget the
I
plans.
just don't get it. I don't know why the hell I'm wasting my time. And it's not against you, but it's happened throughout the village. We have people destroying houses after they've been approved. I just don't get it, folks.
What is our recourse?
Well, this recourse allows you $5,000
Yeah.
against a $3 million property.
Jeff, let me echo what you said. I would also say, taken in total, I don't find anything objectionable about
No,
these
I
changes.
don't,
find
but
the windows acceptable.
there's a procedure.
Right.
And either we come here with a purpose and we do what we're supposed to do, or none of us need this. It's a waste of everybody's time. Sorry to vent again, it's not against you directly. But to come here and say, this is already built.
That's why I couldn't figure out what they were talking
To
about.
give you the backstory on why it was
Yeah.
already built, I was taking some time off last year,
Oh, yeah, and somebody else came in?
and someone else came in, and I wasn't consulted, and now I'm back because of this.
And again, as I premise this is not against
Yeah,
you.
we're
Right,
not
but that's
against you.
why
We've
we're
had a
here.
bad- We've had a really bad
And I
month
know
with
you
this.
take it personally, and I'm asking that you don't.
Don't.
It's just, I'm expressing my frustration, and to the extent that there's anybody here from the trustees who are hearing this or listen to it, it's frustrating. But to Rob's point, I think the design is
Fine.
as good and fine. Whether a White House is better than, or different one way or the other from the shingled house, which I thought was charming when you presented it, I'm not sure that that's a stopper for us. I mean, do you have any issue on the color, Christina, or Rob, or Susan?
No, are there new plans in the file, building plans that show the color change and all that? Okay, because I didn't.
So I'd also just like to say, as part of the procedure, I agree with everything you said, Jeff, and it is important that people have as much of the spirit of compliance and proactivity as possible. I want to thank you, Brian, for coming back. Even when changes are made inadvertently in the field, it is important for people to come back.
Right, I guess,
So,
guess you
thank
could
you for
have
doing
just
that.
winged it.
Yeah.
You-
So,
I was on this board. I know what you go through.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
is there any public?
Any public commentary on these changes to the already built changes? No? Are we ready to vote then?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application to amend the plans for the Ruby residence at 37 Lewis Street.
Second? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. And thank you, Brian. for
Thanks,
being
Brian.
the,
We really aren't trying to be mean. We're just frustrated.
It only appears that way.
Yeah.
No, those were stamped because they're just
Next,
miniatures.
James Miller, 30 Halsey Avenue, construct an addition to an existing screen porch. Okay. This is one where,
I'm Bill Foos, the applicant for the Millers at 30 Halsey Avenue, and I have the designer draftsman with us in case you guys have any questions.
was this posting mailing you got?
Correct.
Got it?
Good evening, board members. My name is Steven Sanabria. I'm here on behalf of Southampton Engineering. I work directly with the Millers to design this addition. It is just over 200 square foot of a screen porch. There's an existing screen porch there now, but we are adding to it. So for those reasons, we're coming back. We're doing everything is staying the same. There's no additional habitable space. There's no interior space being added. We are within our the coverage and within the setbacks and within the pyramid. We're doing all mahogany panels and white trim. The shingle stays the same, and the roof actually slope stays the same as well.
Does anyone have any objection to this?
Just a couple questions and then a request. When you come before us or submit plans in the future, could you put directions on the elevations, north, south,
Oh,
east,
of course,
west?
absolutely.
It can make it hard. And also, in order to see what exists, we really would like to see a full elevation of what exists, not a partial elevation, because we have to look at any proposed changes in the totality of the property. So I understand why you did it, because it's a small change on one part of the house, but we really have to take a look at it overall. But I went by the property. Here are the questions that I had. There are no windows, okay, sorry. The front space, is that all behind screens? The screening for the porch, full-height screening goes all the way around now,
Yes.
wraps in front?
Right.
What is the material on the screening?
The material is bronze screening.
Okay.
The stiles and rails are mahogany.
And that front portion is going to be, looks like it's a barbecue, is that correct?
Underneath, yes.
Underneath
it. You won't be able to see that from...
That was my concern, is whether you see that from the street or whether the screen will provide
The
enough
screen would be in
screening
front
for
of
it. Okay. Those were my questions and comments.
Is it safe?
We'll make it safe.
Honestly.
Yeah.
One wayward duck and you're done over there. All right, I don't have any objections to this. Does anyone on the board have anything more to say?
Nope.
Is there anyone from the public who wants to comment or speak about this? No?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the application for James Miller at 30 Halsey Avenue.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. Good night.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Captain's Neck 1 LLC, 455 Captain's Neck Lane. You want me to? This seems to be quite a minor addition in terms of scope. Is that correct, Mr. Bennett?
It is.
It's a greenhouse.
So I don't think that there's much outcry from the board on this particular situation.
That's what we like to hear.
Okay, well.
Did you introduce yourself?
Tony Hume.
If it's all like this, it would be great.
Hume, H-U-M-E.
Hume. Does anyone,
I did have two related questions. I don't think I saw called out the material and the color. I assume it's metal and it's white, but
It's glass and steel. Metal is black,
black.
and the masonry is brown below the greenhouse structure.
right, and it's not that tall even, is it?
16 feet.
Oh, it's pretty, well, all right,
What's the inspiration?
where's that? Oh, it,
Yeah.
16 June. That's the inspiration.
It might help for the public record.
did you put,
just
yes,
to
put one of
this
these down?
so that
And
Charlie
and
can...
maybe a rendering?
I'm
too,
sorry we
just-
don't have a bigger
Here,
for you.
oh, wait.
Keep that one, right?
Okay, just so, because I think we're going to move pretty fast
Could
on
you
this.
point out just where on the property it sits relative to the road?
Property, this is Captain's Neck 1 with flag lot property at 455 Captain's Neck Lane. And this is the location of the proposed new greenhouse. It sits 245 feet from the front yard property line, about 71 feet off the side yard.
Okay,
And there's a great deal of screening at the front as
There
well.
is. There's also a hedge intended to be planted around this, which will stand about 4 to 5 feet high. So from the gate, this
It'll just be-
perimeter is 12-foot hedge.
10 feet, it's exposed.
Yeah, you won't see anything.
Does it, okay,
No objections at all?
no one has an objection.
Okay.
Is there any public comment?
Did
Thank
we
you.
have enough discussion? Great. Is there anyone from the public? No. In something that's simple, we're trying to actually just, if we think it's fine, say it's fine. Is there anyone from the public who wants to comment on this application? Would that be, anyone? No.
I'll make a motion that we approve the application for Captain's Neck LLC to construct an accessory greenhouse.
Second.
Aye.
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 We'll keep two
Thank you.
of these.
See?
Would you like
It
extra
can be
sets?
simple.
That gets saved too.
Oh, I have to.
Stand? Both stamped?
They're not stamped.
Those two are stamped there.
I don't think those matter. It's the real building plans that are in there. that
Do you
need
care
to
for
be-
the extra copies?
Sure.
We don't need them.
Might need them.
Thank you.
Moving on,
I think your number 2 on the non-historic calendar has arrived.
shown up,
44 Baltimore.
Ocean Play.
No.
Oh, no, the next one. Henry and Bernadette Watkins.
No?
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Call it at the end of the historic.
And also, did anyone show up for Ocean Play LLC?
No.
Of course not. Okay. Next, public hearings, historic. Carol Welsh, 340 Hill Street, demo existing carport and construct garage addition to dwelling.
Good evening, members of the board. Timothy S. McCully, 41 Meeting House Lane, Southampton, for the applicant. Going to put some plans out here. This is a continuation of an October 22nd hearing. These are the reduced plans that you asked for. Basically, the property located at 340 Hill Street, it's a very narrow lot. It's only 75 feet wide. It comprises around 23,000 square feet. The property has been the subject of applications before this board in the past, most notably in 2007. Changes to the house were approved along with the carport that's on the survey and was shown to you on October 22nd. The addition that's being proposed is in the exact same spot that this board granted for the addition, which was the carport in 2007. There was a comment, I reviewed the tape of the hearing, and there was a comment about street-facing garages and how they weren't appropriate. I have a package for the board. I took pictures of many of the houses on Hill Street, all with garages facing the road, including there's one on Captain's Neck and Hill Street, a brand-new house, where the two garages are facing Hill Street.
That has a different front. The front yard is declared as Captain's Neck, sir. We discussed that.
I realize that, but if you think about it, those garages could have been on the south side of that house. That's my only point.
We spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Okay.
It really is garages, attached garages, and the garages we proposed on Hill Street, historic Hill Street, should be back, at the back of the property, not that they can't have a garage.
But this property is very narrow. It has constraints because of the sanitary system. I'm going to show you a survey for the record on that. The ZBA granted this, so...
The ZBA is not the ARB. Okay, fine.
I understand that, but my point to you, that in 1979, there was another building on this. It was in the back. The property has changed. So what I'd like to do is hand up, I went through some of the inventory from the 1979 inventory that was done. The first one is the 340 Hill Street, but in the package, you'll see distinctions in there about what I think is significant in terms of what's a contributing house 40 years later on this property. The property, some of the properties were talked about, the historic the families, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing like that is in any of the reports for 340. So I'm handing this up for the record.
Tim, is this a contributing asset?
Yes.
340?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 340 is. But my next question is, because there was the carport and the changes that were made in 2007, and there's nothing in the inventory that says this is significant in terms of the historic district, my question is this really, in today's world, 40 years later, contributing to the historic district, this particular house?
Could I address that?
Absolutely, that's what you're here for.
I'm astonished at that question, frankly. Definition of a contributing resource in today's historic district are the resources that were identified in the surveys of 1977 and 1979, which then formed the National Register Historic District in 1986, which was then in November of 1986 adopted by the village as the Southampton Village Historic District. The buildings, which were numbered in that inventory and deemed as contributing to the historic district then, are those which contribute to the historic district now. In this particular case, the changes that were approved, in my opinion, to alter that house, which is the way it stands today, were rather aggressive in their nature. And I use that word, little a, the exterior chimney, the carport, the change to the roof line on the east side. Both sides. Those, but I'm referring, okay. Those were significant changes to the architectural character of the then existing resource. Those changes were approved and were built. I feel they made significant changes, but not to the extent that the original house cannot still be understood. And that is consistent with this board's direction, which is to preserve the characteristics, the massing, the street-facing components, etc. And so, in my opinion, the changes that were built, approved and then built then, challenged, maximized aesthetically on what would be considered appropriate in changing that building. What is now being proposed goes way beyond that.
Okay.
And I don't think the direction that the garage is facing is the central issue. I mean, it happens that it's a part of that design. But the massing of that to suggest that the former approval of a carport, which is an open structure, not appropriate to the building, but clearly an appendage to it, is now a justification for constructing a two-story addition in that place is not defensible, if you will. It's just, you know, the design as presented is too much of a impact upon that historic resource.
But my original question about...
Which I answered. It is a historic resource.
I understand that.
And it remains as such.
And it remains so. But there were significant changes to it.
Yes.
He's addressed that.
And there's what I'm trying to point out, that in 79, okay, they're talking about going, you know, like a gateway road coming into the village.
Well, there's a picture on that form.
Yes.
Fortunately for what this house looked like in 1979, and I would submit that the, as I said, but briefly restate, that the changes that were approved, which resulted in the construction and the appearance of the house as now, really substantially challenged the contributing architectural status of the building at that time. Were approved, understood, and still, as one drives by, you can see, well, the exterior chimney, that's not original, the carport, that's not original, the elevating of the roof with these dormer windows, that's not original, but none of those approved changes can now justify further significant changes to that house. You can't incrementally keep changing until you lose the thing. That's not logical. That's not reasonable. What is reasonable is to apply for changes, and if they're approved because they're deemed to be, you know, secondary, etc., that's one thing. But just conceptually, to build upon changes to the point that we now say, whoops, I guess it's not contributing anymore because we've made so many changes.
But what made, I guess my question was aimed at what made this particular house contributing, other than the fact that it was old and it was in the historic district that was encompassed? That's it. Okay, that's
Hill
an
Street is one of the prominent historic districts of this village.
It is stated on the
I
inventory
understand
form.
it. I didn't,
Okay, so
I
we're
didn't
not-
parachute in here last night.
Okay. Well, it's stated in two places.
I think you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to get the record clarified.
Okay, to clarify the record, the
It says-
description and justification for inclusion is in two places. It appears in the inventory of 1979, which is 2 pages plus whatever's added to it, and there are descriptions, both sides, on that form, historical precedent, all the rest of it, and then that information is in turn summarized in the National Register nomination form, which was approved in 1986, and a little thumbnail, maybe 4-line, 2.5-story.
And that's what I handed out, correct? Is that what I handed up, or are you saying there's another form for that?
No, these are the forms.
This is it.
This is the
I provided
record.
enough copies for everybody, so.
Yeah, fine. So that's it.
Okay.
And this is the description.
And what does
then-
it say? It says it's on a tree-lined street, Hill Street, which we know, and we know that Hill Street has significantly changed in 40 years.
Sir, it is a historic district, and this is a contributing asset.
So this is one of the documents. The other that you don't have is the excerpt from the National Register nomination form that was then adopted by the village as a local, and that's the description of the National Register district and each of its contributing components. And HM 17, which is this house, is listed chronologically by street address on Hill Street, and it has a little thumbnail description, and it'll say circa 1890 or whatever it may be, and this is the inventory, and then that was the document that was approved by the state and was in turn approved by the village, and that's the nomination form. And in that, you will find the description. And I would argue that the changes that were made to this house the first time around were quite significant. You can still appreciate what the house was, but there's some exterior changes there that are challenging. And it's those changes which you are now proposing to further build upon and to further change the house. And I don't feel that that's appropriate.
But it's not, there's no viewscape to this house. I mean, there's
From the street?
Yeah, there's a large hedge in front of this house.
Oh, sir. Please,
in all
let's not argue
in all
that
fairness.
we have repeated to you.
Please.
You know, this is the historic district, and this is a contributing structure.
Okay, he's making a record, and let the record stand that if anybody with eyes travels on Hill Street, they will have visibility of the house. That's our record. But you know what, I'm not going to interrupt Tim anymore. We should let him speak, let him build his case, and then we can respond. It'll be much faster that way for everybody. Okay, let him say what he's going to say, and we can dispute it later on, agree or not. Go ahead, Tim.
I have one more exhibit.
I'm sorry.
Because Zach has every right to address it.
Oh, of course.
But I've said, I'm sorry,
I'm asking Tim too. I've been telling him
Yes,
about it.
fine. Continue. Please continue.
I want his professional advice. That's why I asked him the question. I have one more exhibit. There was a discussion about the sanitary system and what was possible with that and everything, so I do have copies of the survey with the location of that, so I want that for the record as well. With that, I'd like to request that the hearing be open for a written comments from me. I need to look at some of the information that's on those thumbnail sketches for the hearing. I mean, with the
Written, do you want it to be adjourned till the next meeting?
Just adjourn it for all purposes, Tim.
Okay, I could do that. Just a couple of weeks or whatever.
He's asking for...
To look at these, the historic documents?
He wants to submit written commentary to the regarding the colloquy this evening.
Okay.
And wanted, I guess, sort of to close it and subject to that,
Okay.
that I think it's better to just
So-
adjourn it for all purposes.
Wait, could we just clarify, the existing septic system is in the backyard?
Yes. It's on the survey there,
Yeah.
right behind the, you see it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Are these, they were sent in.
Just a couple of weeks is all
Do you
I
want
need.
this too? You might need this. Oh, you don't need that?
No, it's
Why?
always in the file.
Oh, okay. So you're
much time do you
asking,
want?
A couple of weeks, whatever.
Next meeting is the 28th.
we'll skip ahead.
What's that?
Yeah, you may not want to.
Don't come to that.
You want to make it the first
I
meeting in
think I-
March?
Is it okay if we go over past the 28th?
Yeah, I won't be here anyway.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, because I don't want to be on when the,
That's where we're helping.
when you know what
here.
is on.
Yeah, so we, in terms
Be
of
March 11th.
March, sir, are you asking for an adjournment till March 11th?
Yes, I am.
Motion?
Can I make just one comment? Just if you're
I'm
going to
sorry.
one other thing. I think the concern that was expressed about garages had to do with attached garages facing the street in particular. Most of what you've shown us here are detached garages. So I think the concern had to do with attached garages facing the street.
I
That was the
understand that, but
particular
if you look at the, I wasn't privy to the Captain's Neck one, but I'm just telling you, when you ride down.
Let him make
whenever
his case in writing, and then we can deal with it at that point.
Tim, it's February 11th.
February 11th, right.
Yeah, I thought March was a long way off.
Sorry.
Oh, I was hoping it would be
Distracted.
March, so we'd be finished with winter. All right. Do we have a motion
Jeff,
to approve the applicant's request?
I make a motion that
To
we approve
adjourn.
the applicant Welsh on Hill Street request to adjourn to our meeting on February 11th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Is there another set of these?
Well, we've got so many things. Well, since she's coming back, I guess we need to keep them on.
I think everything else. That's there, so I'll take it.
Here, do we need 100 of these? No. Oh. All right. Next, 24 Gin Lane LLC is adjourned till the January 28th. And 28 Gin Lane LLC is also adjourned to January 28th. So that brings us to Thomas and Meredith Joyce, 765 Hill Street. Certificate to demolish existing structure, hardship exemption.
The applicant, John Bennett and me, 212 Lima Lane, Southampton, New York. I've submitted the affidavits of notice. Now, the board back in 2017 granted, there are two structures on the property. One is the former Bartlett Tree Care Building. That's what I know it as. That's flat roof building with the false facade. And the board, given the fact that that was 95% of a rebuild, granted a certificate of appropriateness to demolish that, but denied the application for the building to the west, which is known as an antique shop. Yeah, it's very, now the board, this is the second part of the application. The board denied the application in part, and that will, to the extent that you're not aware of this, that matter is in the state Supreme Court. At this point, it's been adjourned pending this portion of the proceeding. So, but this portion of the proceeding is merely a dollars and cents portion. Although we don't agree with it, and we're contesting it in another forum, for the purposes of this portion of the proceeding, it's assumed that the property is a historic property worthy of consideration. So that's not what we're talking about this evening. What we're talking about is quite simply the economics of it. So we have submitted, and I'm going to be relatively brief because this is mostly an expert's, a broker and appraiser's argument, and it's in the record, so I'm just going to highlight it quickly and then ask you what your pleasure is. There's no sense, saying much more than that. We did submit an appraisal. The shop is a pre-existing non-conforming use. The appraiser shows that if it were to continue to be used as an antique shop, the value of the property is approximately $380,000. We also have a letter from brokers saying that based upon his efforts to rent it, it's essentially, there's no rental value for the existing building. So if the existing non-conforming structure were converted to a single-family residence, the property would be worth maximum $640,000. If the property was a buildable lot without this structure, which is a small structure in a wholly non-conforming area, the property would be worth $1.9 million, and you don't have to take the appraiser's word for that. The appraisers will often tell you that a current contract for sale is probably the best evidence of that. I'm submitting to you, redacted to take off the name of the purchaser, copies of the existing residential contract of sale for $1.9 million for the lot. But of course that sale is subject to both buildings being demolished. So that's pretty straightforward at that point. Just quite simply, the owner stands to lose between $1.3 million to $1,520,000 if the hardship is not granted. Perhaps it's best at this time, unless the board has any comments.
Could you there's litigation about the sale of this?
There's litigation about we're litigating the fact that the board did not grant the certificate.
You're litigating the denial.
Excuse me?
You're litigating the denial.
Yes, we're litigating it. Thank you. We're litigating the denial of the first phase. And it seemed to make sense from a point of view of judicial economy to have the board's decision on the second part, the hardship part. Because obviously, if the board grants the hardship, there's no need to continue the litigation. If the board denies the hardship request, then that denial of this part will be rolled into the existing litigation on the first part. So again, you've already made a determination as it relates to the antique building that it should be preserved. So this portion of it, although again we're disputing that, for this portion under your code, it presumes that the property should be preserved. And so it's just a dollars and cents argument.
But does that present and this might be more of an academic discussion, John, than anything else, but does it not present a possible absurd situation where it says an applicant whose certificate of appropriateness has been denied, which it has, may apply for a hardship, blah, blah, blah.
That's what the statute says.
Right, I understand. But now if they're pursuing in Article 78, they're not.
Yes, they are.
They are?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So if they're pursuing in Article 78, and then it's determined that our decision was in error in some case, then the criteria for hearing a hardship it goes away because now there's no decision.
But for the fact that you can explain.
Again, like I said, it's a bit of an academic discussion, and it may seem like a stretch.
What hasn't been mentioned is the fact that the board, has made a motion to dismiss that action for failure to comply with this paragraph of the code.
The hardship?
The hardship. If you'll see, it says that there needs to be a cooperative effort to resolve the difficulty. That, in the opinion of this attorney, has not been made.
Right.
The board has made a motion to dismiss the action for failure to exhaust all the administrative remedies, which is a condition to pursuing an Article 78 action, and that motion has been put on hold pending Mr. Bennett's representations that eventually there would be the hearing we're having this evening.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the idea is that the court has the whole package in front of them.
Right, I understand Bo's logic. Thank you.
This contract of sale is dated October 2014, is that correct?
That's right. But there's been no, the condition hasn't been
No, the
met.
real estate market might have been different.
Can I ask what the hardship is? I'm sorry to be so blunt, but
Well, what
the
it is
hardship?
it's the return. If you have such a large delta between the
That's not a hardship.
well, that's
No, a
not.
hardship
the
is
code
someone
doesn't say-
can't afford something,
that
or
doesn't- Yeah, but that's not what the code says.
or someone who is being faced with a huge
That's not what the code
loss.
says.
Actually, it does, and even though I'm supposed to be the historic consultant,
Go ahead.
just sort of sorry to jump in, but this is not a board to make someone's investment greater or to fulfill someone's financial aspirations. That's not what hardship's about. And we've seen this on North Main Street, and we've seen this in a few other situations in which, arguably, of the 460 or so contributing resources in the village, approximately 450 are economic hardships for somebody, because if they could be taken down and replaced with something larger, compliant with code, et cetera, they'd be worth a hell of a lot more money. And so the very fact, I would submit, that a given building isn't as big and modern and accommodating as it might be otherwise, even this structure that we're sitting in tonight, the code would inevitably allow something larger and grander to be built here if this could be taken down. So it's not about, if we could only take it down, we'd make more money. It's just not about that. The hardship is visited upon the person who made the investment to begin with. And if they can get a fair return on their investment, let's just make up a number. The present owner bought the property for $75,000, whenever. And by selling it for $400,000, is that a fair return? It's not $800,000, and it's not $1.3 million, but that's what it's about. That's what the hardship is about. Not can we find a way to maximize the value for somebody.
Well, actually, hardship is what is called in the statute, but it's not hardship, it's a reasonable rate of return. It's a rate of return is what the
For the
code says.
person what is your client's basis in this property?
Actually,
What is their basis in the property?
I'm not aware of what it is.
We can't calculate a return without knowing the basis. It's impossible to judge any return without knowing what their basis in the property is.
That's your position. I'll take it under advisement, but I understand where you're going with it.
How can we possibly judge what their return is if we don't know what they paid for it and when? It's not possible.
The property was purchased prior to the imposition of the historic district. So it wasn't a situation where there was any self-made assets.
By the current owners?
Yes, well, the estate, yes.
So let's, because I think you started it off, John, by saying it's dollars and cents, and I think some of the questions coming up that Rob has asked are a part of understanding the dollars and cents.
Yeah.
So to understand that, the basis, so when, how, and for how much was the property acquired?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so then let me tell you what I think I know about it. That the property had been in the Platt family for a number of years. When Mr. Platt died, he left it to his daughter, Meredith Joyce, and her husband, Tom. All right. Tom subsequently passed away, I guess recently, now, and I assume Meredith is still alive?
Is Mrs. Joyce alive?
Mrs. Joyce, I don't know.
So
who owns the property?
It's the estate of Thomas Joyce. Because whether or not she's alive or not doesn't affect my answer to that.
The property was in his name alone?
The property was in, I'm not aware.
Excuse me, you just said the estate of Thomas Joyce. Was the property in his name alone?
I assume since it's now an estate asset, it's either was in his name alone or his wife predeceased him. It doesn't matter, though.
Well, you're representing the owner, and you're telling us you don't know. Well, who are you representing?
I'm not representing the estate. In any sort of probate proceedings, I am representing the estate of Thomas Joyce in this proceeding.
And you don't know if Mrs. Joyce is still alive as of today?
No, but I know it's in the estate property, and that's been told to me by the estate lawyer.
Well, who was the owner of the property when Mr. Joyce died?
Thomas Joyce.
And anybody else?
Not to my knowledge, if it was in the wife...
You don't know?
Well, wait a minute, just slow down. Presumably, if the wife is still alive and it was held as joint tenants or tenants by the entirety, it wouldn't be part of his estate.
Well, isn't that information the board should have?
No, I've represented to you that it's owned by
No,
the
they're
estate of
asking you a
Thomas
question
Right.
for information, and you're saying you don't have the response.
That's not what I said, Bo. I said it's owned by the estate of Thomas Joyce. The question became whether or not Mrs. Joyce, predeceased, Mr. Joyce, let me finish, or is alive. I don't think it matters.
Well, if Mrs. Joyce is still alive, then she's a surviving joint tenant.
Depends upon what he said in his will. Maybe he gave her a third of some other
Why should the board be faced with wondering what's happened?
I'll get you the question to the answer, which is whether or not she's
I have a more specific. I have a more specific question, which is that, again, starting from where you said, John, it's dollars and cents. If you're going to make an appeal for hardship, it's important, as Rob said, that we understand what the basis is for that hardship. To Zach's point, it's not a matter of maximizing return. So I would like to know, and I would like you to come back and answer it at some point, how much was paid for the property by the current applicants?
Except for the fact that I don't think it's a fair, I will get you the answer for that, but I will also give you economic evidence that it's not a fair, it's not fair to look at dollars, the value of dollars. The value of dollars has to be put forward. You know what I'm saying.
I know what's coming out of your mouth. As I'm interpreting what you're saying, I know the reason you're saying what you're saying. I disagree with it, and when it comes my turn to speak, I'll address it. But we'll let the other members speak.
I did have one other question, and give me a moment just to formulate it. I mean, the village code very specifically says that hardship is determined based on whether you can or cannot achieve a reasonable return on the property.
That's what it says.
The village code also says that a reasonable return does not mean maximum dollars.
That's true as well.
So the question, in order to gauge what the return is and therefore to be able to determine whether it's reasonable or not, we really need to know the answers to the questions that Jeff just gave. There's no other way to judge it. We have to know what the basis is in the property financially, when that was made, and we make a view of it.
I don't think I've said no to any of those requests.
I understand. Yeah. The fact that there's up to $1.5 million more that could be achieved under some scenarios doesn't necessarily have any bearing on whether it's a reasonable return at the lower level or not.
May or may not.
It may or may not. We don't have the information to determine that.
Okay. Those are fair requests.
Anything else?
Well, Christina, otherwise, I'd like to address some of the issues both on.
Go ahead.
Christina, did you have something?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I mean,
Okay.
I've been listening to everything.
Okay, fine.
It doesn't make sense.
I've had to
know what the basis is.
I've thought about this case in a fair amount of detail because, and John, if you don't mind, I'm going to address some of the board members, but you as well, because I think it's important. I mean, John is representing the applicant, and he does a great job of that in everything he does. But I think it's important for us to understand the ramifications of what this application means and what the issue of hardship means. So my addressing is more to you folks. The applicant's presentation is methodical. They go through a lot of detail as to the present value, the rental value, the projected value, and to John's point, how much could be had. And in fact, if in fact the house, the property was denuded of its historic and contributing assets, it would be worth more. And to Zach's point, it would be like 400 some odd other houses. But words do matter. And there were one or two statements, words that John and the consultant used. It doesn't say rate of return. It says an applicant to prove the existence of hardship must A, that the property is incapable of earning a reasonable return, not a reasonable rate of return, a reasonable return. And in fairness to John and everybody else, that it should not be the most profitable return possible. He said so by his own admission. and that also that the property can't be used in other ways that it could not have some reasonable return. So, what is reasonable return? And let's break that down. There are two components to it, reasonable and return. Okay, it's pretty, and this is a segment in the code that is not long on verbiage, but it's pretty direct and it's simple. It is subject to misinterpretation, and I think that's what the very methodical work that was done by the consultant ended up doing. It misapplied by subtle misuse of language and a misuse of the intent to come up to a conclusion that we should grant the hardship. So what is return? According to businessdictionary.com, it's simply the proceeds from a sale. It's the yield generated by an investment. To your point, what is that investment, Rob? And you can look that up. I can go back to my business school textbooks and give you similar definitions. In another online publication, Investopedia, return, in its simplest terms, is the money made or lost on an investment. Prudent investors, it goes on to say, know that a precise definition of return is situational. It's situational under circumstances, it's situational under time, and under market conditions. It also goes on to say, and to the folks who don't deal in business and investments, that there are two types of return, negative return and positive return. They are both returns because a return is the money received on the proceeds of a sale. Now, when it's a negative return, we commonly call that a loss, and when it's a positive return, we commonly call that a gain. The language in the code was specific, and I have to believe that there was reason why they did not say loss or gain. They said return, because the people who wrote the code know that markets change.
So if I may, I just want to know if you're saying that a negative return is within the ambit. That's important that I understand.
When I finish,
please elucidate.
When I finish, right.
Thank you.
So, and in various situations, any return, positive or negative, can be deemed reasonable. The Greek financial crisis of a few years ago, Greek investors were paying a premium for Swiss bonds. They were paying $1.05, knowing that the bond they were buying was only worth 97 cents or thereabouts. They were willing to take a loss on it because the market conditions in Greece were so terrible that they'd rather have their assets in something secure. Okay, so in that situation, a negative return was a reasonable return. We have situations in real estate markets. If somebody buys a house at the peak of the market and then, for whatever circumstances, sells the house when the market is down, they may be very happy to get something a little less or maybe a lot less to get out of the house. This is a track of the median value of houses in Southampton over approximately the last 10 years. If you bought a house in 2009, and whatever your circumstances were, the market conditions were such that the median house and value in the market had gone down, you might have been very happy. I personally bought a house in the 80s, and circumstances when interest rates changed, I was happy to come out even. Was it a good return? No. It was, and by the time I got through, it was a negative return. I was very happy to get that. It was deemed a reasonable return. If you want to talk about hardship, there was a house on Meadow Lane that was bought in 1995 at $4 million. It was then sold in 2008 for $22 million. It was sold in 2012 for $9 million after being listed at $11 million. Things change. A return is a return. A negative return is simply that. and a negative return in certain markets can be reasonable. To assume anything else, and the writers of the code knew that, to assume anything else or to assume that a reasonable return means a reasonable rate of return or a positive rate of return or a gain would put this village in the position of guaranteeing every house that was purchased, no matter what your circumstances, whether your hardship was your marriage broke up or the market declined. Is the village to step in? I have to believe that the writers of the code knew full well why they were writing. Now, when you talk about return on investment, Christina, I'm speaking, because this is an important matter, because we are taken to the cleaners, and we have a case here that we've been incrementalized from having 2 historic contributing assets to being down to 1, to now being down to 0.
That's not fair.
So please,
one of them was found not to be one by your board.
John,
well, I'm not going to correct you when you make a false statement.
It's not false.
It is.
Okay, thanks. So deem it false. Okay.
It is false by your own admission.
Mr. Bennett.
No, I didn't say that. You said it.
Your board's
but
admission.
let's say it. So I'm in venture capital. I take people's money and I invest it. When they talk about return on investment, they are talking about one thing very simply. I gave you, Jeff, $1. At the end of the day, how many dollars did I get back? Is it more or less? Is it 5 times more than I invested? And in some cases, it's 0. In some cases, it's a tax loss, because we do venture capital, and you know what? That's the nature of the game, and they accept that, and I wouldn't say they're happy with it, but there's no hardship there. It's just the nature of the game. So we do need to know what the investment is. We do need to know what the cash paid was. And again, to do otherwise would not give us sufficient information. The other part of it is in subsection B, the property cannot be adapted for use which would result in such a reasonable would not result in such a reasonable return. We have prior testimony, and there's writing in here that it could be used as either an antique shop or it could be used as a single-family residence. There are statements in here that the house is generally sound. It's surely in need of repair, which gets to 2 other things. One, which Bo mentioned, which is the application process, which requires that prior to such hearing, this is section 65(8)(c), the applicant shall consult in good faith with the board and other interested parties to seek an alternative. That has not been done. That there may have been conversations with other folks, but not to the board. I think this language also demonstrates the intent of the writers of the code, that they wanted to preserve, first and foremost, that which should be preserved and not allow it to be torn down. And again, to my knowledge, no such efforts have been made. And in fact, contrary to the fact that alternative uses haven't been sought, that the house has been marketed for a number of years. John brought up a bid, and I assume Elizabeth Joyce was the broker on it. At least that's the way it appeared in some of the information. But no effort over the last few years has been applied to maintain the property, which brings up another issue, which is that the property now is the applicant is saying that the property is in disrepair, has no uses. Well, this is in effect a self-created, self-imposed hardship. And not only is it my opinion that we should deny this application, I think we should remand it and move to remand it to the building inspector for violations under the maintenance codes, which is section 6510, and to consider penalties under 6511.
I have the numerous letters asking for a discussion about alternatives.
But not to the board? But not to the board.
Yes, to the direction, and the direction has been to proceed with this first.
Mr. Bennett, though, it did say...
I'll put them in the record. That's fine.
Okay.
I'll put them in the record. That's fine.
Yes, if we don't see them, it's not to the board.
Maybe you didn't read them. The statutory language is incapable of earning a reasonable return. That does not contemplate a negative return. The situation that you gave, the hypothetical, which is nice, I'm well aware of it, followed it in the Wall Street Journal. The reason that those Greek bondholders sold the bonds was because if they risked the bonds becoming worthless. That's not an analogous situation. And it talks about reasonable return. It doesn't talk about negative return. It doesn't talk about that at all. So I would just, if you want to take the position that the statute contemplates a negative return, go ahead. That's interesting.
Right.
I'm glad. I just want to make sure that's your position in the for the record.
A return is a return. It can be either negative or positive. And what I said was in certain markets and in certain conditions, reasonable can include a negative return.
I'm glad you're saying it again.
Can I ask, to follow up on something Jeff asked, can you illuminate at all the current status of the use or maintenance of the property? Who's responsible for it? And, other than the grass being mown a few times a summer, and it took about a month and a half before it happened this summer once, is there, to Jeff's point, physical hardships, which in the physicality of the building could help determine the value of it, you can't create your own hardship that way by neglecting the maintenance of the building. It does appear to be under-maintained. Can you help us understand who is taking care of it and whether money is being spent to make sure the roof doesn't leak and that sort of thing?
With great respect, that's beyond the purview of this board.
No owner or person with an interest in real property designated as a landmark or included within a historic district shall permit the property to fall into a state of disrepair, so as to cause, in the judgment of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, a detrimental effect upon the character of the landmark or historic district. Plain as day to me. That's part of the code, and you know that, Mr. Bennett, don't you?
I know the code as well as anybody.
I bet you do, more than me.
But that's beyond the purview of this application.
A year and a half ago, when we had the discussion on what should be the preservation of the two buildings where we allowed the carriage house or the garage to receive a permit to be demolished, the village spent money to hire experts to see if this building was, the antique shop was in a state that could be preserved, and the board voted that it could be. We're not talking about 20 years ago. We're talking about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and that's not what's before you now, though.
No, but if you're letting it if the owner, whoever that might be...
I told you who the owner was. I told you the estate of Thomas Joyce.
Okay, if the estate of Thomas Joyce is...
Let me finish, because you raised it.
I would love to finish, too, but go ahead.
A question was raised as to whether or not Mrs. Joyce was still alive, and I said, I'll give you the answer to that.
No, but now she's asking a different question.
I'm asking, because it's not, somebody, if they're not maintaining it, whoever the estate, who's ever in charge of this estate, is allowing for the denigration of this property, which is, might add to your case, but our job is to preserve historic buildings when necessary, and it seems to be necessary. So there's a lot to this hardship situation. That being said, do you have any more to add?
Nope.
So are you asking us to adjourn till,
I will try to get the information that Mr. Coburn asked.
Well, we all need that information. We probably need it.
No, of course you do. I said, Mr. Coburn asked me.
Are you asking to adjourn?
I will try to get the information so that you knew which information I was going to endeavor to get.
Okay,
it was the information that Mr. Coburn asked me for.
John, can I ask as a favor? Because I did say at the end I was inclined to move towards remanding this to the building inspector.
You don't have a remand authority.
Well, we can suggest that the building inspector look at it as 6510. John,
don't use fancy words, because you have no remand.
You know what, John?
Okay.
You pissed me off a little bit there.
Oh,
so I'd like to move that we make a suggestion to the building inspector to review this property under 6510, which requires for the maintenance of the property. Do I have a second on that?
I second.
In the middle of a hearing.
Okay.
You would actually be making a
just talk to
motion to instruct the building inspector.
Yes.
Not suggestion.
We
Thank
do?
you.
Okay. I second it.
I'll vote aye. I think it's...
Okay, thank you.
It's in your purview.
Have a vote?
It's not a
Aye.
remand. A remand is a term
Was there a
of art.
second to the motion?
Was there a second? I seconded
Okay,
it.
then how is the vote?
All in favor?
No, how is the vote?
Aye.
We just did it.
Aye.
Aye.
Didn't hear the votes called out.
Aye.
4 ayes. All present voted aye. Now, moving on.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this.
Yes, do you want to adjourn it to the 28th or move ahead to the
11th.
the 11th?
11th.
That's what I think, too. Great, thank you. That
I
was
make
good.
a motion that
You're
we
going to be here, I get it.
Accept the applicant's request.
Yeah, that's at my request.
Accept the applicant's request.
I accept your request.
No, you make a motion.
To
Make a
accept,
motion to accept the request for Thomas and Meredith Joyce on Hill Street to adjourn to our meeting on the 11th of February.
Second, aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Have a nice evening.
You too, John.
so adjourned to February 11th?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I'm going to make that motion.
So wait, this all goes in here and then it
Do
gets...
you want, okay.
Do you have anything that you want to put in this? Oh, maybe we should put, asking, requesting,
This has to go on itself.
this one goes in?
This is true, yeah.
Okay.
We have another stamp.
Jeff, do you have a stamped copy of the contract?
No. No, I have nothing.
Hold
I
on.
got nothing.
Susan May.
I don't see anything stamped.
We have two.
Oh, wait,
We have two.
I've got too many pieces of paper here. Okay. That being said, we're moving on to Christopher Moore, 509 First Neck Lane, construct two-story addition to existing dwelling.
Affidavits? Affidavits are...
Good evening, Melissa Bedovich, Brookline Environmental Associates, on behalf of Mr. Moore. I am here with Marcella Sotile from Pink Architecture. And we are here for an addition to an existing single-family residence. Located on, at 509 First Neck Lane. It's a 2-acre flag lot property, which it also includes frontage along Cooper's Neck Pond, and Marcel will explain the rest of the project.
Okay, so the project is located on a flag lot off of First Neck Lane. It is an existing residence. If you go to the second page of your book, you'll see the aerial photo view that shows the existing residence and the pool. It has, on the south is neighboring the Meadow Club. On the north is neighboring a new modern house that was just finalized a few months ago. It has a Copper's Neck Pond on the west, and on the east it has another residence which they share the driveway with. The existing house is a cedar shingle home with Dutch roofs. It is about 2,000 square feet, and the owner had 3 specific requests when he hired us to do the addition. One of them was that he had a specific attachment to the existing property, which he owns since 1987, which meant that the existing house he did not want to touch. The addition was to respond to a program of his family growing, and he wanted to continue the same architectural style of the house. So if you continue and flip your book to page, I think that we can start with the elevations. Page 7. You can see on the top of the page is the existing front elevation of the house, and in the bottom of the page you can see the existing front elevation with the addition to the right of the paper. That addition is being proposed on the north part of the lot, and it is a structure that would be continuing the existing architectural condition of the existing building, same materials, same colors, same type and size of windows, and it would be finalized with a attached garage that is proposed at the far end of the property with terrace on the top that would match the existing terrace on the other side. And if you flip on to the page number 8, you can see the west elevation, which is very similar as well. It keeps the symmetry of the house. It extends with the garage at the end. Rooms that are held in this area of the house, and an additional entrance or opening towards the back of the house, which is the pool that faces Copper's Neck Pond. That opening that is going to be connecting to the pool area would have a screen porch that is part of such addition. If you continue and look at your pages 11 and 12, you can see the renderings that show that we are continuing to use the same materials. The building continues with the same height of the building, and the only thing that extends a little bit farther is the attached garage.
It should be noted after that last presentation too, this is not a contributing structure.
I think Zach actually has a little to say.
Well, I just want to, for the record, make it clear that the address of this property, 509, was in 1979 the address of the contributing property,
Right.
which remains out front.
Correct.
Which has subsequently been changed to 505. So the contributing property
It's the front house.
Is
is the front house.
Right.
East, the house to the east.
Right. But this often happens, this is a flag lot, and as it turns out, I think this had probably, it was an accessory building.
Correct.
Which is likely referred to as the barn, which was later made into a residence. I'm not sure it was a barn, but it was an accessory building which has already been adapted for that purpose as a dwelling. The fact that the street address was changed might cause some ambiguity because 509 used to be recognized as the contributing property. This is now 509, not the contributing.
Right, we had investigated that actually when we were hired, and when the planning board, the only information I could find really, because Diane and I went through all the books and everything, was when the planning board decision on the subdivision of this lot.
Great.
We just switched the number, but I think it's important for the
Good,
record
we
to show.
straightened that
because
out on the record.
There's an inconsistency with the historical record about the street address.
Okay. Anyone, do you have more to say? No.
Questions?
Anyone have any comments?
I just wanted to, I don't think it was on the plans I saw, but the renderings indicate that the roof material throughout is wood shingle, cedar shake.
And it stays the same on the addition.
The only thing that caught my eye, not in a great way, and it's not a big issue, but can you comment on the new dormer windows on the front elevation, the east elevation, in the shed dormer? They stand out because they don't have any mullions. And are those casement windows?
You are in the front.
Can you pull this off the microphone?
Didn't do it on purpose. Front of the house.
Sorry, Charlie.
You are talking about this?
Correct.
Yes.
So those are the only windows that I see that don't have mullions. So presumably they're casement windows, or?
They are, but if you prefer to see the mullion in the middle, to have them be one and one, we could definitely do that.
I don't have big objections to this architecture. I think you've done a nice job, and it's, to me, very compatible. I also like the slightly modern touch to the staircase on the back. and I think it works well. Those windows sat in another world for me. They were not really modern specifically, and they sit on a more traditional-looking facade, but they didn't match the others. So I just throw that out as the one thing that caught my eye. Maybe I don't know if it's something that anyone else on the board had a concern over or had
Just
questions about.
it's also in the rear of the house. I mean, on the back side, so really, I don't think it's going to be
No,
any...
but what
Skylights.
he's discussing is the front.
The front?
Yes.
You can't really
Again, on a
see it
on a-
from the
on a flag lot.
I don't usually like to say this, but you
I
really
know.
can't.
Yep.
You could see it from the pond.
Actually, no, because this is the front side. This is
Oh,
not the
no, but I
side.
mean, you can see the house.
You can see
Yes,
it
you can see the
from
house in
That
front,
is a
yes.
public,
Correct.
okay.
We can,
Just so
you
we're
can see
oriented
the
and
house in the
everyone's
opposite, so I'm sure they can see it.
Okay. I don't have objections to this. I did see there were some pretty nice trees that you're going to have to do something with if you put that addition on there.
There are 3 of them that we are going to relocate.
Okay, good.
Yes, we are not. We have been instructed that the trees cannot be sent anywhere other than being relocated in the
Good.
property. They were
We want to keep every
planted by
tree
the
we can
owner.
in Southampton.
Could I also just make one other comment? I really appreciate the clarity of this presentation and some of the other materials you've submitted. It's very helpful and very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
True. Jeff?
No objections, very nice.
Christina?
I have no objection. I think it's very appropriate.
Motion to approve?
Any comments?
Not any public
Oh,
comment?
I asked, I thought there's only one motion,
I make a motion.
I don't think there's anyone to ask.
Nobody left.
One more application.
Christopher Moore on
Sorry,
First Neck
what was the motion? I'm sorry. Repeat the motion? Repeat the motion?
I made a motion.
Yeah, repeat it,
Please, I didn't hear it.
It was
Okay.
crinkly over here.
I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I make a motion that we accept, that we submit the application for Christopher Moore on First Neck Lane for written decision by our council.
Second? Aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
We can give you
Yes,
the
who-
unscanned
You
copies.
can, or you can keep them.
Well,
want them?
are they of use to you? They're of no use to us, since
Okay.
we have the scanned copies.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Final application, historic, Anthony Punnett, 310 Hill Street, amend a prior ARB approval for a chimney addition.
Good evening, Ben Chaliff, Chaliff and Rogers Architects, on behalf of the applicant. Affidavits. This was previously approved with a variance to construct a small second-story addition with a dormer, and before construction was begun, the applicant would like to include a manufactured fireplace on the first floor. There was no footprint change. The only thing that the building inspector said that we need to come back for is the exposed chimney. It is in the historic district, but is a non-contributing structure.
Is this replacing the chimney that's there?
There is an existing small brick chimney that will be removed as a part of the shed dormer addition. That was just approximately 12-foot square chimney for the furnace, and it's obsolete.
In the I don't think it's appropriate for where it is, but, so I don't know why you can't make a proper brick chimney out of this. Is there a reason, there's a reason for you not to, other than money?
Well, that's the large part of it. To build a $30,000 brick chimney mass for a simple fireplace when you can do the same thing in a much easier to maintain stainless steel flue pipe. That was the owner's choice.
Is it a gas fireplace?
No, it's wood burning.
Okay. And is this building this structure contributing? It's not. It's in the historic district, but not contributing.
Correct. for a long time was, I forget, Zach could remind me, but it was a plumber's store and shop for a long time, and it was renovated in about 2009.
I'm try not to color it. Thank you. I could not approve a stainless steel flue chimney in the historic district. And if it's a matter of money, unfortunately, as you can see from the hearing earlier, we were dealing with money. This is a very valuable property. It's a very valuable part of the community. So if they want to build a chimney, it's got to be brick.
And why is that?
Because all the other houses more or less have brick, and I think that stainless steel flue pipe is incompatible with the nature of the historic district. Hill Street is a gateway to the village, and I would, not only is this incompatible, but I think it's a negative, and I think it also sets a precedent that I would not want to bear with in the future.
Other board members? Christina?
I'm not in favor of the metal chimney.
And Rob?
Yeah, and I would just add, this property, this building is very close to the road, and it's actually visible also down Halsey Avenue, or Halsey Street. So it's sort of doubly visible, in a doubly visible location in the historic district. And similar to my colleagues, I'm not in favor of setting a precedent for stainless steel, which is it's just simply a material we don't see for chimneys anywhere.
So if it was a painted stainless steel, would that be acceptable?
No.
No,
If you want to have a chimney, you're going to have to have a chimney that's a proper chimney in a historic district.
To a non-contributing structure?
Yes. Sorry, the other people have, you know, it's the environs.
I understand that.
Okay.
There's nothing in the code about it being masonry required or not. It's functional to a...
All the chimneys are functional. That's the problem, is that this would be a precedent that we don't want to set, and it's visible, and we're not, it appears that no one on this board is in favor of it. So I don't know what to tell you. We aren't. You're going to get it voted down. That's what's going to happen unless you want to ask to come back and bring a different chimney to us.
Well, you would need to see that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I'm saying ask to come back.
Well, if in fact the client wants to.
Yeah.
What we have voted against in the past, and this is where something that Rob has spoken about a number of times, to provide you and others guidelines. And your questions are justified. I don't know if you've come before this board before.
I have not, since you're on this board, I have not.
All right. So we rarely grant, in fact, I don't know of any one time that we've granted either a flue chimney like this, nor a wood-encased chimney.
No, we don't want shingle chimneys.
Or shingle chimneys. And in fairness to you, that should be part of guidelines. It's not in the code, but we have judgment over what's approved and not, and what's deeming what's compatible and what's not. I wish we had more guidance for you, other than, you know, perhaps looking at the pamphlet that's in the building department. But what we can tell you now, Ben, is that this is not compatible. And if they do want a functioning fireplace, then we would be more inclined to approve a traditional brick chimney.
Okay.
So are you asking us to?
I guess I'll need to speak with my client and find out if he wants to reapply.
Well, you can adjourn this and come back with a different design. So you don't necessarily have to do the whole reposting and everything else.
Okay.
You preserve all your options, and you avoid having to
Okay, then I request, please, that we adjourn.
Now, here's the other rub. To the next meeting, which might be lengthy. So people are choosing to go to February 11th. If you want us to hear it on the 28th of January, it's your prerogative.
Does that decision need to be made right now?
Yeah, because we have to put it in the record. But you could ask for an adjournment. You could send us a letter.
Okay, so let's go on to the 28th.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
pick the
so you're
date.
asking us to adjourn this application until the 28th, so you can speak with your client and perhaps bring us a different design. Is that
Very well
correct?
said, yes.
Thank you.
I make that motion to adjourn for all purposes the application.
No, to accept
To accept the applicant's
Applicant's
request
request.
to adjourn this hearing until January 28th.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So if you change your mind, send a letter asking to continue the adjournment to March 11th.
Will do. And is it the practice of this board to entertain, rather than draw it out over another meeting, if I were to bring
You have to bring it.
two alternatives for the
Oh.
for the next meeting? Is that acceptable?
Should probably propose one, but you could bring
Yeah,
two
you could-
alternatives.
okay.
In case you, yep.
Okay.
We really do, it's the materials often that, we're talking about the materials of this particular
understood.
project, correct?
And
Okay.
what I said, to give Ben some guidance,
Hey, look
a
around.
full brick chimney, not a brick-faced chimney, but a full brick chimney.
Well, if it's the appearance of brick,
That may present a problem.
how so?
One, its appearance. Two, the building department actually has some issues with the quality of brick fascia, that in the event of a flare back or a fire, anything like that, boom, it shoots off. So, you know what, and I realize all this has to do with money, and I'm not reaching into your client's pockets, but for their benefit and for yours and the villages in getting this done, a full brick chimney is going to give you a more likelihood of getting a favorable response. Okay? And it's a nice thing to do in the historic district.
I understand your opinion, yes.
Thank you, Ben.
If it's possible for you to bring samples or photographs of good examples of whatever you come back with, that would help us as well.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, we have one more item, which is a resolution to meet before our next meeting at 6 PM.
In executive session.
In executive session. So the proposal would read, resolve the BARHP hereby schedules the regular meeting of the board on January 28th, 2019, to commence at 6 PM local time instead of the regular time of 7 PM local time, to provide the board time to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Aye.
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 And just as a practical matter, then the regular public...
Stepped on, Jeff.
Aye.
The
Which is
regular
easy, yeah.
public
People might
hearing would
hate.
commence at 7 no matter what. If we
Right,
meet
we
for
might
20
have to have a
minutes...
coffee.
Okay.
We don't know how long it's going to be, and that's going to be Wayne, because Bo is not going to be here. Right?
Okay.
Oh.
There's a planning board at 5 o'clock that day. You don't think it's going to run into the 6 o'clock?
There'll be an executive session.
We could go we could go somewhere else.
Could start the meeting elsewhere, right?
into the
Well, you'll be in the mayor's office.
What's that?
You can convene the meeting and adjourn it.
They're working on it.
Can I pick up for 30 seconds on something? This has come up a number of times. We've discussed it a lot in this meeting, and I don't want to say, there's a trend necessarily, but we've seen a number of instances recently of essentially non-compliance and in some cases more specific flouting of the laws, or the intent of the laws at least, particularly on some contributing structures. And I'm just wondering, one of our missions is essentially an educational mission, but we also have resources or the ability to request resources or support from the trustees. I'm wondering if we feel that there is a need or an opportunity for some sort of advertisement or publicity or other way of reminding people of the import, particularly people with properties in the historic district or contributing structures, of the responsibilities that come along with that. Because it feels to me as though there are a slightly increasing number of applications where, for whatever reasons, whatever the intent is, the execution of the project is different to what has been approved and is not in conformity. So I'm just wondering if we think there is anything that we could do, either as a board or through request of the trustees, to try to remind people gently of their obligations, particularly, as I said, the owners of contributing structures.
You've got a website, I mean, you have access to it. I don't know how that could be amended to provide some kind of educational
Well, I think
material in there.
they also need to hire another building inspector and people to go out in the active market of building, because there is a new building inspector, and in meetings I've been in, they have to hire someone who can.
Yeah, right. I agree with Susan on this. The two existing building instructors seem to spend a lot of their time on
Inspectors, not instructors.
Inspectors, sorry. Spend, is understandable, a lot of their time on the technical inspections of plumbing and framing and insulation. But it seems that some of these problems could be identified or caught before they become as large as they are if there were more resources that were doing just more observational inspections of construction sites.
It's a budgetary issue, I guess.
Right, I think they are putting in the budget for one more building inspector, in a meeting I was in the past week. So I think it's okay. We have to see what happens. How's that? They know there's a need.
I'm wondering if through, tax bills or other mailings, if there's a way to identify people who reside at or own contributing structures to send a reminder.
Well, unless they're going to do something to it, there's no reason to talk to them.
It's kind of micromanaging it, Rob.
Okay.
And if the penalties are not great enough to discourage it, that's
Well,
always going to happen. That's human nature.
I agree with that. We might have to work on that.
Okay,
Do I
thank
have
you.
anything else? Motion to close this meeting of
Make a motion that we close this meeting with
January 14th.
Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation on January 14th, 2019.
Second? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.